All right, let's get some NFL draft insight from CBS Sports. Josh Edwards, who's joining us, and it's rare for my team to make a move that is widely applauded. But the Chicago Bears, Josh, decided to trade the number one overall pick before the start of free agency, which is going on right now, and get a haul from the Carolina Panthers that includes 2 first rounders, 2 second rounders, and a starting good wide receiver in CJ Moore. So what did you think about what they were able to get from Carolina?
Yeah, when this process began, I was kind of, hoping they were going to be able to stay within striking range of getting one of those elite defenders, whether that was Jalen Carter or Will Anderson Jr. But the package that they got in return, I don't think anybody could argue with the type of value that they got. And I think adding a player like DJ Moore really kind of gives them some stability in that wide receiver room. Suddenly, you feel a lot more comfortable with Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool being the second and the third options as opposed to being the go-to guys in that offense. So adding a star like that kind of helps the depth in that room. And I think overall, Chicago kind of took fate into their own hands. They didn't go into free agency needing to get one of these overpriced wide receivers. They didn't have to enter the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes. They kind of took matters into their own hands and filled a big need before we even got to free agency.
Yeah, DJ Moore. Thank you for correcting me there. He was a phenomenal player. What did you think of the Carolina side of this, and who do you think would make most sense for them as a quarterback at number one?
Yeah, I've seen opinions all over the board as to what Carolina is going to do with the pick, but I think now having the number one pick in your control kind of gives you the flexibility that what we saw with Chicago. I mean, you could stay and pick, you could trade back a little bit if you feel you like 2 or 3 of these guys in this class and you're comfortable with any one of them. So it's entirely possible that they do end up trading back and getting compensation, maybe from a team like Indianapolis that we thought was rumored to be in the mix for number one overall. But I think when you have struggled to fill the quarterback position the way that they have in recent years, you have to be aggressive and get the guy that you think is the best in this class. Whoever that ends up being, I kind of find it hard to believe that they would give up all of this to acquire Bryce Young. So in my mind, they're probably leaning towards C.J. Stroud or Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. Levis being the least mentioned of the group, but I know for a fact Carolina has liked him at points in this process, so I wouldn't entirely rule him out either. But I think Carolina at this point, with everything that they've gone through trying to fill the quarterback position, they're probably just going to stay put at number one overall and pick the best player.
It seems pretty rare to be able to mention 4 different guys as a possibility as the number one quarterback in this draft. I guess you go back to the Baker year, Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar was in that group. Josh Rosen, right, was in that group. Is that the comp to this of like how rare is that, and how difficult is it to parse through these guys of who is the best pick at number one?
Well, it's exciting. What ultimately comes of this class is up for interpretation, because as much as we talk about these quarterback prospects and what their strengths and weaknesses are, a lot of their success is going to be determined by the situations that they step into, the coaching that's around them, the players that are around them. Some of them are not, at a stage in their lives and their careers where they can handle being the focal point of a franchise. So you kind of need to give players like Anthony Richardson a little bit of time. But I think you see the traits that get you excited. We look back at that class with Baker, and he ended up being the number one overall pick after spending months talking about whether the Browns were going to take Baker Mayfield or Josh Allen number one overall. So the fact that anybody is projecting what Carolina is going to do at number one right now, I think is a little bit misguided. And everything that we say about Bryce Young and how talented he is and the type of leader that he is, we've seen time and time again from quarterbacks is that we don't know how to evaluate the position. I mean, a lot of it is luck. So we'll probably look back in a couple of years and the first quarterback taken might end up being the third best prospect at the position from this class. I mean, it's entirely difficult to tell, but I think one thing that I can say with certainty is that fans have reason to be excited about the possibilities at the quarterback position atop the draft.
I want to get into the Illinois guys here, and you can mention one of them. I'm sure coming up here when we talk about some of the first round and the top of the draft. But if you're not looking for a quarterback, what are the positions that you feel good about in this draft? And then the converse of that, what positions are kind of lacking?
As far as elite talent is concerned, I think the edge rusher position is probably the one that I feel most comfortable with in terms of the depth at the top of the class. You've got Will Anderson, you've got Miles Murphy. A lot of people like Lucas Van Ness, who is an Illinois native himself. There's options atop this draft class. Georgia's Nolan Smith did a really good job of, putting his best foot forward at the NFL Combine. So there's talent there. But as far as the class that I like the most, the position group that I like the most, it has to be the tight end position. I think there's 4 guys that in this specific year are worthy of that first round conversation, because once you get past the first 8 prospects or so in this class, I think the rankings from team to team are going to be very volatile. I think what you may see from one team at number 20, maybe a different team's number 50 overall player may not even be on that team's board at all. So I think there's going to be a lot of, volatility, differing opinions in this class. And I think when you look at Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, when you look at Luke Musgrave from Oregon State, Iowa's Sam Laporta. I love Sam Laporta. I think it's finally good that he gets a little bit of recognition among this stacked tight end class. But Dalton Kincaid from Utah.
Illinois,
yeah, exactly.
About him, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, but really deep, talented tight end class, and I think teams that are not capable of getting one on day one can still get really quality players even into day 3.
I'm probably doing this for myself and Bears fans, but offensive line, that top tier. What do you think of Peter Skoronski, a Big Ten guy, Paris Johnson, a Big Ten guy, and then Broderick Jones? Illinois actually was in on him recruiting wise. Very young, but very talented. What do you think of that possibility in that number 9 range?
I think you certainly have to consider it. Skoronski would be the one that I'm most comfortable with among that group. Johnson and Jones, you see the traits that kind of get you excited, but they're still young, developing players. I mean, Paris Johnson spent 1 year at left tackle. Broderick Jones still very young in his own right. So I think both of those players are unfinished products, and it's kind of difficult to project what they're going to be, although you see all of the traits that get you excited. Skoronski for me is just, the highest floor in this class, maybe the lower ceiling as far as the tight end or the offensive tackles that we've been talking about. But I think you absolutely consider him with the number 9 overall pick, because whether he stays at offensive tackle, which I know he can, he may not be this elite offensive tackle in the NFL, but I think he can be a very solid offensive tackle to next level. But even if he's not, you feel comfortable about his ability to transition inside and really be a long-term option for a team as an interior blocker. So I would certainly consider that, especially as you're trying to figure out what Justin Fields is and what his future is within your organization, because I think you have to have an answer on that after this season, because you now have this additional draft capital where if you decide he's not your guy after this season, then you now have the draft capital to make a move next year and potentially get one of those top quarterbacks, whether that's North Carolina's Drake May, whether it's USC's Caleb Williams, or somebody else that emerges over the next 12 months.
We've seen wide receivers come in and make immediate impacts. We know running backs certainly can do that, even though their value might be a little lower when it comes to draft stock, just because of the nature of the position. But if you're a fan of an NFL team looking for a playmaker, Josh, which ones do you have the most confidence in this class?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like position groups or just individual?
Just individuals at wide receiver, running back, yeah.
Yeah, the ones that I feel most comfortable with would be North Carolina's Josh Downs. A little bit more of a slight frame, but somebody I think that can transition well to the next level. He's already a very polished route runner, somebody that has shown a knack for creating separation and eluding defenders post-catch. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, taking aside his individual talent, you can kind of see the transition, how easily it's been for Ohio State wide receivers making that leap from college to NFL, whether it was Terry McLaurin or Michael Thomas or Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. There's plenty of examples in recent years, and I think Smith and Jigba is not the most explosive, but a player that's going to be really productive for you because of how polished and easy the game kind of comes to him. He's got a real natural feel for sitting in zones and stuff like that. So those are the 2 that I'm most comfortable with. I know a lot of people are not going to have them atop the board because They don't lack the explosive traits. They don't lack they don't have the size that a lot of teams cover as far as boundary options are concerned. But those guys, I think I have the easiest time looking at and saying they're going to transition to the next level very easily.
All right, let's dive into these Illinois guys. And, you've come on and talked about some guys who might be borderline picks. Seems like 4 Illini are likely to get drafted within the top 4, top 5 rounds here. But one in the first round. It's been a while since Illinois has had a first rounder, AJ Jenkins and Whitney Merciless back in 2012. But Devon Witherspoon, you have going number 10 to the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a very popular destination in mock drafts. Just give me what your evaluation of Devon Witherspoon is when he got on your radar and just what you think of him.
Yeah, he was one of my preseason top 10 players in the Big Ten. So, I mean, he's somebody that I've valued even before what many consider a breakout season. He's got a little bit more of a slimmer frame for a boundary cornerback, but he certainly doesn't play like it. He plays much bigger. He's, got a fiery personality. I love the personality in which he shows on the football field. In Philadelphia specifically, I think that's really something that could endear Witherspoon to a team like that because of the energy in that community, the way that those natives of Philadelphia carry themselves. I think he's an easy player to root for in that kind of an environment. So he's really well coached. He's willing to play downhill. And that's something that I've said about all of these Illinois defensive backs in the past couple of years is they're really well coached. And that's going to be something that teams look at because you kind of have more faith in a player like Witherspoon and, Kirby Joseph last year being able to make the transition to the NFL because of how they've been coached to this point. One thing that I liked about Joseph last year is you could see the amount of confidence that the Illinois coaching staff had in him. He would show blitz at the line and then dart back, 20 yards into coverage right before the snap. And you don't see that from a lot of college programs because they don't trust their defensive backs to be able to make that kind of a read. So I think those players are empowered, and I think you see why it transitions so easily to the next level, and I think that's going to help Witherspoon.
I was going to ask you, how do you see they're well coached when you're watching film?
Yeah, it's just their discipline. You see them being empowered to do things that a lot of younger cornerbacks, safeties are not empowered to do because you typically try to simplify the game for these defensive backs. So when you can see them handle a larger workload in the way that Illinois' defensive backs have been, that's something that you really look for. You see the coaching staff have confidence in those players because you can ask them to do something, but when you see coaches ask a player to do something that's outside of their comfort zone and maybe a step farther than the basics that would be required on a specific play, I think that's really where you kind of see that discipline and that coaching come into play.
Feels like Sidney Brown's stock has really skyrocketed here. What do you think of him and how high do you think Sidney Brown can go?
Yeah, so for me, I still think it's probably going to be early day 3 type range. I think he's all of those Illinois testers were just fantastic. I mean, they jumped out of the gym, they ran fast. So as far as an individual program, college is concerned, I mean, Illinois acquitted themselves as well as anybody at the NFL Combine. But Sidney Brown, I think, is just a really instinctual player, similar to what we've been talking about with a lot of these Illinois defensive backs. Now he has the testing to kind of stack up with that. So you feel a little bit more comfortable with him. Maybe he does get into the back end of day 2 there. But I think with the way that he's been coached and the athleticism that he has shown, if he's able to put it all together at the next level, I think you're looking at a player that could stick in the league for a long time.
Quan Martin, too, has shown a lot of versatility. What do you think of his stock?
Yeah, you said it, versatility. I mean, this is a player that can play safety. He can play the nickel position. Tested very well in Indianapolis. I think I've got it right here, actually. Let's see. Yeah, 44-inch vertical jump. I mean, that is incredible. 11'1" broad jump, ran a 4.46, 1.47, 10-yard split. So tested off the charts, somebody that, really made a name for himself in Indianapolis. And I think similar to Sidney Brown, they're kind of traveling there together as far as those guys that could get into late day 2, possibly early day 3, because you're seeing the coaching that they received while they were at Illinois. And now they have the athletic background that kind of leads you to believe that there's even more untapped potential down the road. So, I think as teams kind of look for defensive backs into day 2, into day 3, those are the types of players that they're going to take a chance on because they've shown that they can play at a high level and they can be trusted to, execute a scheme.
Last one for you, Josh. Chase Brown was probably the most household name among college football fans when it came to Illinois, as he led the FBS in rushing during the regular season, second team All-American. It's an interesting running back class. How do you kind of place Chase Brown into all of that after such a fantastic last 2 seasons?
Yeah, he's definitely moved up my board. And to be honest, sometimes the grades that we put on players don't necessarily match the notes. So when you reached out to me, I looked at my grade and then I looked at my notes and I was like, why wasn't I higher on this guy going through the season? Because everything I wrote about him was fantastic. He's a guy that's willing to put his nose in there and block. He's got good vision. He showed good speed at the NFL Combine, good explosiveness. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited. I know he's a little bit of a smaller prospect in terms of being 5'9.5", but that 209 pounds is, right in line with what you look for in a feature running back. So he's definitely answered some of the questions that I have for him. I'd like to see him run with a little bit more physicality sometimes and use that speed to kind of, turn speed into power. But a player that really, I think, has helped himself throughout this prospect. 1,600 rushing yards this past season, 27 receptions. So he's shown his ability to be a well-rounded running back. And I think he's definitely moved himself into the conversation where when you're looking for a running back, possibly day 2, even into day 3, that's a name that could really, start to emerge because this is a deep running back class. And I think Chase Brown has put his name right there alongside the others.
Josh Edwards, CBS Sports, NFL draft expert. You can follow him on Twitter at EdwardsCBS. Josh, I know this is a really busy time, so we really appreciate your insight, man.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.